Ho, 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 gather close, my friends. Pull up the cozy chair, wiggle those listening ears, and get ready for a story about courage, friendship, and a little raccoon discovered that going last doesn't mean you're too late. In a bright little forest called Mapleberry Woods, there lived a young raccoon named Remy. Remy was kind, Remy was clever, Remy could stack acorns better than anyone in the whole forest. Well, almost anybody. The squirrel named Nibbles once stacked 12 acorns on his head and walked 3 steps before sneezing. Record broken, Nibbles shouted. Then all 12 acorns rolled into a puddle. Remy laughed so hard his tail fluffed up like a feather duster. For even though Remy loved laughing with his friends, there was one thing he didn't love trying first. Oh no, 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 no. Remy liked to watch. He watched before climbing a branch. He watched before tasting a new berry. He even watched before joining a game of hop over the log. I'm not scared, Remy would say. Then he'd pause. I'm just, collecting information. His friend Poppy, the rabbit, tilted her head. You've been collecting information for 20 minutes. Remy nodded seriously. I like to be thorough. One sunny morning, all the young animals gathered near Sparkle Stream, where the water curled around smooth stones and giggled over tiny pebbles. Today was the first ever Mapleberry Friendship Challenge. Santa had helped the forest animals plan it during one of his summer visits. Oh, yes, Santa Papa John visits the forest too. Just like your house, your town, your village, your city, your neighborhood. I can visit a forest too. Sometimes with boots, sometimes with cocoa, sometimes with a sandwich he packed himself and forgot that it was in his coat pocket. The Friendship Challenge had 3 fun parts. First, cross the stepping stones over Sparkle Stream. Second, carry a pine cone carefully through the windy grass. Third, ring the silver bell under the old willow tree. No prizes, no winners, just cheers, laughter, and a celebration picnic at the end. Poppy bounced in place. This is going to be amazing. Nibbles puffed out his tiny chest. I was born for challenges. A little turtle named Tuck blinked slowly. I was born for snacks. Everyone laughed. Remy smiled too, but his paws felt wiggly. The stepping stones looked safe? Probably. Mostly? Maybe. There were round ones and flat ones sitting across the shallow stream like little gray pancakes, but Remy didn't move towards them. Poppy hopped up beside him. Want to go with me? Remy shook his head. Nope, no, you go first. Are you sure? Absolutely, Remy said. I'm still collecting information. Poppy smiled kindly and hopped to the first stone, then to the second, then to the third. See? She called. Not too bad. Remy nodded. Good data. Nibbles scampered next. He jumped from stone to stone, waving his tail proudly. I am graceful, I am speedy, I am. Whoa! His foot slipped just a tiny bit, and he sat down with a splash. Not a big splash, just enough to make his tail look like a wet paintbrush. I meant to do that, Nibbles said. Everyone giggled. Remy laughed too, but inside he thought, see, that could happen to me. Then Tuck the turtle crossed slowly, very slowly. He stepped onto the first stone, then paused. He stepped onto the second, then paused again. Nibbles whispered, should we have lunch while he crosses? Tuck looked over. I heard that. Everybody laughed again, but Tuck kept going. Little by little, he made it across. When he reached the other side, everybody cheered. Remy clapped the loudest. Great job, Tuck. Tuck smiled. Thank you. I was nervous. Remy's ears perked. You were? Tuck nodded. Of course, but nervous feet can still move. Remy looked down at his own paws. Nervous feet can still move? He liked that. But he didn't move. More animals went across. A chipmunk, a fox cub, two ducklings who didn't really need the stones but used them anyway because they thought they looked fancy. At last, Remy was the only one left on the starting side. Poppy waved gently. Come on, Remy, you can do it. Remy swallowed. The stones looked farther apart now. Remy, how that happens, isn't it? When others crossed, the stones looked friendly. When it was Remy's turn, they looked like they had opinions. Remy stepped towards the first stone, then stepped back. I think maybe I'll go after one more person, he said. Poppy blinked. Remy, there isn't one more person. Remy looked around. Oh? Just then a warm chuckle came from behind the trees. Ho, ho, ho! Well, now I know that feeling. Everyone turned. There stood me, Santa Papa John, wearing his summer Santa shirt, red suspenders, and the boots with the little bit of forest mud on them. A bluebird sat on his shoulder like it was an official assistant. Santa, everybody cheered. Santa waved. Hello, my brave little friends. Remy smiled, but he looked down at his paws. Santa walked over and sat on the smooth log near the stream. Remy, I said gently, you've been watching carefully. Remy nodded, very carefully. And what did you learn? Remy thought about it. Poppy went fast and smiled. Nibbles went fast and splashed. Tuck went slow and still made it. Santa's eyes twinkled. That sounds like some mighty fine information. Remy sighed, but I still don't feel ready. Santa nodded. Sometimes ready doesn't show up before we begin. Remy looked at him. It doesn't? Not always. Santa said sometimes ready meets us halfway. Remy stared at the first stone. What if I slip? Then you get your paw wet, Santa said. Nibbles raised his tail. Wet tails are also possible. Santa laughed. Yes, thank you, Nibbles. Very scientific. Nibbles bowed. Santa looked back at Remy, but you won't be alone. Poppy called, I'll stand right here. Tuck nodded. I'll cheer slowly but sincerely. Everybody laughed. Remy took a breath. Then he stepped onto the first stone. His paw wobbled. His whisker twitched, but he stayed standing. The forest went quiet, not a scary quiet, a hopeful quiet. Remy stepped to the second stone, then the third. The water bubbled beside him. Hello, Remy whispered to the stream. Please don't splash me today. The stream, being a stream, did not answer. He took another step and another. When Remy reached the far bank, everyone cheered so loudly that a bird dropped a berry in surprise. Remy blinked. I did it! Poppy hopped over and hugged him. You did it! Remy looked back at the stones. I watched everyone go first, he said, but my feet still had to take their own steps. Santa smiled. That's the beginning of brave. Now the challenge wasn't finished. Next came the windy grass. Each animal had to carry one pine cone across the path while the meadow breeze puffed and pushed. Poppy tucked her pine cone under her chin and bounced across. Nibble bounced his on his head for 3 whole seconds. Then it rolled down his nose. I improved from acorns, he announced. Tuck carried his pine cone on his shell. Moving slowly and proudly, Remy stood back again, watching. This time, though, he noticed something different. He wasn't watching because he wanted to hide. He was watching to learn. Poppy held her steady. Nibbles laughed when his fell. Tuck went slowly and didn't rush. Remy picked up his pine cone. It was prickly. Excuse me, he told it. Please behave. The pine cone did not answer either. Remy held it gently and started forward. The wind puffed, the grass swooshed, the pine cone wiggled. Remy almost stopped. Then he remembered Tuck's words. Nervous feet can still move. So he moved one step, two steps, a little sideways step when the wind got bossy. At last he made it across. The pine cone stayed in his paws. Remy grinned. That was actually fun. Nibbles gasped, Careful, Remy. Fun can become a habit. By the time they reached the old willow tree, Remy felt taller inside. The little silver bell hung from the low branch, shining in the sunshine. Each animal had to ring it to finish the friendship challenge. Poppy rang it with a light ding. Nibbles rang it twice by accident. Tuck reached up and gave it a softest tiny ting. Then everybody looked at Remy. His turn again. But this time Remy didn't step back. He stepped forward. He looked at the bell. He looked at his friends. He looked at Santa. Then Remy reached up and rang the bell. Ding! The sound floated through Mayberry Woods like a happy little song. Everyone cheered. Santa clapped his big hands. Ho, ho, ho! That was wonderful! Remy laughed. It almost, I almost didn't try, he said. Poppy smiled, but then you did. Remy nodded, and then this happened. He looked around at his friends, the stream, the grass, the bell, the picnic basket being spread under the trees. This happened, he said. I found out I could. That afternoon they all shared berry muffins, honey crackers, and one mysterious sandwich from Santa's coat pocket. What kind is it? Nibbles asked. Santa opened it and squinted. Well, it started as peanut butter. And now, Poppy said. Santa sniffed. Now it has become an adventure. Everyone laughed so hard even Tuck nearly tipped sideways. As the sun lowered, Remy sat beside the sparkle stream. Santa sat next to him. You know, Remy said, I think I still watch sometimes. Santa nodded. Watching can be wise, but I don't want to watch forever. Santa smiled. That's even wiser. Remy dipped one paw gently into the stream. It helped seeing my friends go first, he said, but it felt different when I finally went. Santa's voice grew soft and warm. That's because courage can be borrowed for a little while from people we trust. But sooner or later we discover some of it is inside of us all along. Remy smiled. I like that. So do I, Santa said. The bluebird on Santa's shoulder chirped. Santa nodded. Yes, yes, you were brave too. You sat on my shoulder through the mystery sandwich. The bird chirped again. I agree, Santa. Very brave. From that day on, Remy still liked to watch first. But now, when his turn came, he didn't always step away. Sometimes he stepped forward. When the animals tried painting with mud, Remy watched Poppy make a flower. Nibbles made a blob. Tuck made something that looked like a potato wearing a hat. Then Remy painted a bright sun. When they tried singing at the meadow concert, Remy watched first. Then he sang one little line. It came out squeaky. Nibbles whispered, a musical door hinge. Remy laughed so hard he forgot to feel embarrassed. And when the forest held another friendship challenge, Remy didn't go first. Not quite. But he didn't go last either. He stood beside Tuck and said, Want to go together? Tuck smiled. Slowly. Remy grinned. Bravely. And together they crossed the stepping stones while their hands cheered, while their friends cheered. Step by step, smile by smile, braver than before. And somewhere near, I, Santa Papa John, watched with a twinkle in my eye, knowing that sometimes the biggest change in a child's heart doesn't make a loud noise. Sometimes it makes like one small paw stepping forward. Here's the moral of the story. We watch others go first because we feel unsure, and that's okay. Watching can help us learn, feel safer, and understood what we do. But we should not let watching become a hiding place forever. Courage begins when we take our own step, even if it's a small, slow, and a little wobbly. Remy learned that being brave does not mean going first or being perfect. It means believing that you are allowed to try, allowed to learn, and allowed to grow. When we support others and then take our own turn, we can discover that confidence was quietly growing inside of us all along. Wow, ladies and gentlemen, that was pretty awesome. Are you brave today? Will you challenge yourself to do something new? Come on back tomorrow and listen to another wonderful tale by Santa Papa John at Storytime by Santa. Ho, 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 Santa loves you.
The blueprints and Peter Bach coming up at the bottom of the hour. Like, where's like the entry point for you? For me, it's just been torts, but where is it for you?
Ho, 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 gather in close, my merry friends. Snuggle up, get comfy, and let your imagination put on its hiking boots because tonight we're going on a grand adventure. Not to a snowy rooftop, not to a toy workshop, and not to the North Pole cookie table. Although Santa does miss that table when he travels. No, indeed, tonight's story takes us to streaming geysers, wide open skies, bubbling hot springs, tall pine trees, and more wildlife than you can shake a candy cane at. This story is called Santa Goes on Vacation to Yellowstone National Park. Now, after a long season of sleigh bells, wish list, peppermint cocoa, and one particular complicated bicycle assembly on Christmas Eve, Santa sat down in his big chair and gave a happy sigh. Mrs. Claus looked up from her knitting. Yeah, she said, that was a sigh of a man who needs a vacation. Santa smiled. Was it that obvious? Mrs. Claus nodded. You sighed, then stared out the window for 6 full minutes and whispered, I wonder what a geyser sounds like. Santa adjusted his glasses. Well, I have been curious. Mrs. Claus reached beside her chair and pulled out a colorful travel magazine. On the front was a picture of Yellowstone National Park, golden fields, snowy mountain peaks, in the distance, tall pines, blue rivers, and a great burst of steaming water shooting into the sky. Across the top it read, Yellowstone, where the earth tells stories. Santa leaned forward. Oh, he said. Mrs. Claus smiled. I thought that might get your attention. Santa studied the picture. Look at that, he whispered. It's beautiful and peaceful, said Mrs. Claus, and full of adventure. And, she added, not one single toy assembly instruction sheet. Santa put a hand over his heart. Say no more, I'm going. Now, my merry friends, Santa packing for Yellowstone was a sight to see. He packed flannel shirts, a warm jacket, a sun hat, sturdy boots, a canteen, trail mix, binoculars, and a little notebook labeled Santa's Vacation Thoughts and Very Important Outdoor Observations. Mrs. Claus peeked inside. Why, she asked, have you packed 12 sandwiches? Santa looked thoughtful. Hiking, he said. 12 sandwiches worth? One must be prepared. The reindeer, of course, gathered to watch. You're going to the wilderness? Asked Dasher. I am, Santa said proudly. Will there be snow? Asked Donner. Some, said Santa, but also rivers, forests, meadows, and geysers. Cupid blinked. What's a geyser? Santa puffed up happily. A geyser is a marvelous burst of hot water that shoots up from the ground like the earth suddenly remembered it had something exciting to say. The reindeer stared. Then Blitzen said, That sounds dramatic. Exactly, Santa replied. Soon Santa set off in his travel sleigh, the one smaller than his Christmas Eve sleigh and much better suited for vacation. It had polished runners, a cozy seat, and a basket in the back filled with snacks, maps, and one emergency tin of gingerbread cookies. The sleigh flew over mountains, farms, lakes, and winding rivers until it saw the sign said below, Yellowstone. The land looked huge and beautiful, like a painted storybook come to life. There were deep green forests, rolling valleys, silver streams, broad meadows where tiny dots moved slowly in the distance. Bison, Santa guessed. He landed near a rustic lodge just outside a pine forest. The air smelled like wood, sunshine, and clean, cold water. Santa stepped out, stretched, took a deep breath. He said, that is mountain air right there. The ranger in a green hat came walking over with a friendly smile. Welcome to Yellowstone, she said. You must be Santa. Santa tipped his hat, and you must be someone wise enough to know where all the trails are. She laughed. My name is Ranger Ellie. A pleasure to meet you. Ranger Ellie looked Santa over kindly. His red flannel shirt, hiking boots, binoculars, and a notebook tucked into his pocket. You look ready. Santa nodded. I have sandwiches. Well then, she said, you better prepared than some folks. Ranger Ellie showed Santa to a charming cabin with a porch facing the trees. Beyond the cabin, you could hear a stream murmuring over rocks. There was a rocking chair on the porch, a wool blanket folded neatly by the door, and inside a little stone fireplace. Santa stood in the doorway smiling. This, he said softly, is a very fine cabin. You want to rest tonight, said Ranger Ellie. Tomorrow I can show you some of the park. Santa grinned. I would like that very much. That evening Santa sat on the porch with a mug of tea and watched the sky turn gold, then pink, then soft blue. Birds flittered through the branches. Somewhere in the distance a coyote called, though not in a scary way, more of a good evening everyone sort of way. Santa wrote in his notebook, observation number 1, trees make excellent listeners. Observation 2, mountain air makes tea taste extra good. Observation 3, I have already eaten 2 hiking sandwiches and have done no hiking yet. Curious. The next morning, Ranger Ellie met Santa at sunrise. Ready, she asked. Santa stood tall, canteen at his side. Very. They walked along a trail through the pines where sunlight striped the path, and little chipmunks darted about like tiny acrobats. Late for a meeting, Santa paused with every few steps. To look, he explained. At what? Asked Ranger Ellie. At everything. He looked at the dew on spider webs, at yellow wild flowers, at a fallen log covered in soft moss, at a woodpecker tapping a tree with determined little knocks. My goodness, Santa said, this place is busy with beauty. Ranger Ellie smiled. That's Yellowstone. Soon they came to a wide open meadow. Santa stopped so suddenly that Ranger Ellie nearly bumped into him. Out in the field stood a herd of bison. They were enormous, calm, magnificent. They moved slowly through the grass like furry mountains with feet. Santa lowered his voice to a whisper, "Well now." Ranger Ellie nodded. "Beautiful, aren't they?" Santa lifted his binoculars and watched them quietly. One younger bison gave a little hop and a kick, as if they were feeling particularly pleased to be alive that morning. Santa chuckled. "That one has joy in his knees." Ranger Ellie laughed. "That's one way to put it." They stood there a long while simply watching. Then Santa opened his notebook and wrote, "Observation number 4. Bison are like walking armchairs made of courage." Observation 5. Even very large creatures can have playful mornings. By midday they reached a boardwalk near a field of streaming pools and bubbling mud pots. Santa's eyes grew wide. The water in some pools were bright blue, like the pieces of sky dropped into the earth. Others were green, orange, and gold around the edges. Steam rose in a soft white clouds, and every few moments, somewhere in the distance, whoosh, a geyser burst into the air. Santa clapped his hands. "There it is!" Ranger Ellie grinned. "Would you like to see Old Faithful?" "Would I? Absolutely!" They found a bench and waited with other visitors. Families sat quietly. Children pointed at the steam. Cameras clicked. The ground itself seemed to hum with hidden energy. Santa leaned towards Ranger Ellie. How does the earth do that?" She smiled. "Hot water, pressure, rock, and patience." Santa considered that. "That sounds like a recipe for surprising people." Just then Old Faithful erupted. A giant shining burst of water and steam shooting high into the sky. The crowd gasped and cheered. Santa's mouth fell open. For a moment he looked less like a jolly old fellow from the North Pole and more like a delighted little boy seeing fireworks for the very first time. When the geyser settled, Santa sighed happily. "Well," he said, "that was worth at least 3 sandwiches." That afternoon, Santa had lunch at a picnic area near a river. He ate a sandwich, then another half, then one cookie, and then he announced, "Hiking requires excellent fuel." Ranger Ellie raised an eyebrow. "You walked 2 miles." Santa nodded solemnly. "Exactly." After lunch, they wandered near the riverbank where the water rushed clear and bright over rounded stones. A family of ducks paddled along the edge. One duckling tried to hop onto a rock, missed, and plopped gently back into the water. Santa laughed so warmly that even Ranger Ellie started giggling. "He looked very surprised," Santa said. He did. That evening back at the lodge, Santa joined a small campfire program led by another ranger. Families sat on benches while the ranger spoke about caring for parks, respecting wildlife, and leaving nature as lovely as you found it. Santa listened carefully. Beside him sat a boy named Max, around 11 years old, and a baseball cap and a serious expression. During the talk, Max looked interested, but also a little worried. After the program ended, Santa turned to him. "You have a thinking face," Santa said kindly. Max looked up. "I do?" "Oh yes," said Santa. The eyebrows gave it away. Max smiled a little. "I'm supposed to help with the Junior Ranger cleanup walk tomorrow," he said, "but I'm not very good at talking to people. What if I mess something up?" Santa nodded slowly. "Ah, one of those worries." Max kicked slightly at a pine cone. "I want to help. I just don't want to say the wrong thing." Santa leaned back on the bench. "May I tell you a secret?" Max looked surprised. "Okay." Sometimes even Santa worries about saying the right thing. Max blinked. "Really?" "Certainly, especially when speaking to very important people." "Like who?" Santa lowered his voice. Mrs. Claus when I've forgotten where I left my boots. Max laughed. Santa continued, but helping doesn't always start with perfect words. Sometimes it starts with showing up, paying attention, and doing one kind thing at a time. Max thought about that. One kind thing at a time, he repeated. Exactly. The next morning, Santa joined the Junior Ranger group. There was about 10 children, Ranger Ellie, and a few parents. They walked the trail carrying gloves, small bags, picking up stray litter, and making sure the path was tidy. Most visitors do a wonderful job, Ranger Ellie said, but every now and then a wrapper or a bottle gets left behind. We help keep the park beautiful. Max walked behind others. At first, Santa stayed near him. Soon they spotted a paper cup near a log. Max picked it up, then he noticed the snack wrapper tucked behind a bush. Then a bottle cap by the trail edge. As they walked, a younger child named Lucy got her glove stuck while trying to reach a piece of paper. Max quickly stepped over and helped her free it. Thanks, Lucy said. Max shrugged, but he smiled. A little later, another boy wasn't sure where to put a recycling bottle. Max showed him, then he pointed out a sign everybody had walked past. What about staying on trails to protect delicate plants? By the end of the walk, Max was talking more easily, not loudly, not dramatically, just kindly and clearly. When Ranger Ellie thanked everyone, she added, and a special thanks to Max for helping the younger kids today. Max looked startled, then pleased. Santa gave him a small wink. One kind thing at a time. That afternoon, Santa and Ranger Ellie drove to a scenic overlook high above the valley. The view stretched for miles. Forests, river bends, hills, and distant mountains under a sky so wide it made Santa's heart feel a little extra roomy. At the overlook stood an elderly man stretching the landscape in a notebook. His name was Mr. Henry, and that every summer he visited Yellowstone to draw. I've been coming here for 20 years, he told Santa. 20 years? You must know this place very well. Mr. Henry smiled. I know enough to understand I'll never finish admiring it. Santa liked that very much. Below them in the valley, a group of elk moved slowly through the grass. One elk trotted awkwardly along long legs and enthusiasm. Santa chuckled. That one hasn't quite figured out where all its knees are. Mr. Henry laughed so hard his pencil slipped. By sunset, Santa was full of the peaceful kind of tired that comes with walking, breathing fresh air, and seeing beautiful things. That night he sat by the cabin fire and wrote observation number 6. Geysers are the Earth's way of cheering. Observation 7. Helping keep a place clean is a way of saying thank you. Observation 8. Courage can sound very quiet and still be real. Observation 9. I only have 2 sandwiches left. This is deeply concerning. On his last day at Yellowstone, Ranger Ellie took Santa to a calm lakeshore. The water reflected the mountains like a giant mirror. They sat on a log sipping hot cocoa from travel mugs. It's peaceful here, Santa said. It is. They watched the ripples move across the lake. Then Santa asked, what do you think children should remember most about a place like this? Ranger Ellie smiled. That nature is not separate from us. We're part of it. So we should treat it with care, respect, and gratitude. Santa nodded. That's beautifully said. A breeze moved through the pines. A bird skimmed low over the water, and in that quiet moment, Santa felt a kind of happiness that settles deep and stays a while. When it comes time to leave, Ranger Ellie and Max came to see Santa off. Max handed Santa a small flat stone he had found near the trail, smooth and round with a stripe across the middle. For your notebook pocket, Max said. Santa looked at it carefully. A treasure, he said. Max smiled. To remind you of Yellowstone. I shall keep it always. Ranger Ellie shook Santa's hand. Come back any time. Oh, I hope I do, said Santa. This place has filled my heart and my notebook. As the travel sleigh lifted into the sky, Santa looked down at the forests, the rivers, the meadows, and steaming geysers below. He had come to Yellowstone for a vacation and he had found rest, yes, but he also found wonder, fresh air, new friends, quiet courage, and a beautiful reminder that the world is full of places worth loving and protecting. Back at the North Pole, Mrs. Claus met him at the door with a hug. Well, she asked. Santa smiled. Yellowstone was extraordinary. Did you rest? I did. Did you learn anything? Santa handed her the little striped stone. Mrs. Claus turned it over in her hand. Then Santa said, I learned that the earth tells stories too. In steam, in rivers, in forests, and in the quiet way people care for them. Mrs. Claus smiled warmly. That sounds like a wonderful good vacation. Santa nodded. Then he opened his notebook, turned to a fresh page, and wrote, Santa Around the World Adventure number 2 complete. Bring extra sandwiches next time. And that, my friends, is how Santa's trip to Yellowstone began, one of the grandest, gentlest, and most wonder-filled adventures in his Santa Around the World series. Because sometimes a vacation is more than a getaway. Sometimes it's a chance to listen to the land, careful for what is beautiful, and remember that even the biggest world can feel like home when you treat it with love. Moral of the story is the world is filled with beautiful places, wonderful people, and quiet chances to show kindness, courage, and responsibility. When we care for nature, help others in small ways, and stay open to wonder, we grow stronger in heart, richer in gratitude. Real adventure is not just about seeing amazing things. It's also about protecting them, appreciating them, and believing that even one small helpful act can make a difference. Wow, isn't that amazing, folks? Is Yellowstone on your list for an adventure? It was amazing, so much fun, and thank you for listening. And I hope you come back soon for another story time by Santa. Ho, ho, ho! Santa loves you. Ho, 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 gather close, my friends, settle in nice and cozy because tonight's story is about a little bear with a big heart, a tiny doubt, and one moment that helped him see what was inside him all along. In the sunny valley of Honeybell Hollow lived a young bear named Benny. Benny was gentle, kind, and wonderfully polite. He was so polite he said excuse me when he bumped into flowers. He said thank you when bees flew past. And once he apologized to a rock after tripping over it. I'm sorry, Benny said. The rock, being a rock, said nothing. Benny nodded. Apology accepted. Ho, 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 Benny had manners from his nose to his paws. But Benny had one problem. He didn't believe he could do very much. When friends climbed trees, Benny watched from below. When they played leap over the log, Benny helped count. When they sang at the meadow picnic, Benny hummed quietly in his honey biscuit. I'm just not good at things like that, Benny would say. His best friend Daisy the deer didn't like hearing that. Benny, she said one morning, you're good at a lot of things. Benny shrugged. I'm good at holding snacks. That's true, said Milo the mouse, peeking out from behind the berry basket, especially if the snacks are not too heavy. Benny smiled. See, snack holding, that's my gift. But Daisy shook her head gently. You're also patient, you're kind, you listen, and you always help. Benny looked down at his paws. Helping is different. Different from what? Different from being brave. Daisy tilted her head. Maybe helping is brave. Benny thought about that. Then he shook his head. I don't think so. Now that very afternoon, Honeybell Hollow was getting ready for the Great Meadow Lantern Night. Oh, I think we've heard that before. Every year, all the animals made glowing paper lanterns and hung them along the path to the big willow tree. There would be music, muffins, warm berry tea, and a special moment where everyone shared one thing that they were proud of that they had tried. Santa Papa John loved visiting for Lantern Night. Oh, yes, indeed. I sure did. He said the meadow lights looked like stars that decided to take a walk. Benny liked Lantern Night too, mostly because of the muffins. This year, Daisy had an idea. Benny said, you should help us hang the lanterns. Benny's eye got wide. Hang them? Yes, like up high? Not too high. Benny glanced at the willow tree. Some of the branches looked very high, some looked medium high, and some looked high enough to make Benny's stomach feel like they had swallowed a bouncing acorn. I don't think I can, Benny said. Daisy smiled softly. You don't have to do all of them, just one. Benny looked at the lantern in her hooves. It was the golden yellow, the little stars painted on the sides. One lantern, he asked. One lantern, Daisy said. Benny took the lantern carefully. It was light. It glowed softly. It didn't look scary at all. But the thought of climbing the little step ladder near the willow tree. Oh my, that felt like a whole basket of worries. I'll carry it over, Benny said, then someone else can hang it. Daisy didn't push. That's a good start, she said, so Benny carried the lantern across the meadow. Very carefully, very slowly, so slowly that Milo the mouse walked beside him and said, are we traveling or are we aging? Benny chuckled. Lanterns deserve respect. Milo nodded. So do muffins, but I carry those much faster. At the willow tree, animals were busy decorating. Poppy the rabbit tied ribbons. Otis the owl checked the lantern strings. Milo organized tiny candles by size, which mostly meant he stood beside them and looked important. Santa Papa John arrived wearing his warm red vest, his bright smile, and the boots that had somehow collected 3 leaves and 1 confused caterpillar. Ho, 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 I said, calling what a beautiful day for a little light. Everyone cheered. Benny smiled, but he had held the golden lantern close. Santa noticed. Well, now, Santa said, walking over, that lantern looks like it found a very careful friend. Benny nodded. I'm carrying it. I'm not hanging it. I said, as I sat on the nearby stump, an important difference. I don't climb, Benny said. Never. Benny shook his head. I don't think so. Santa's eye twinkled. That's a heavy thought to carry. Benny blinked. Heavier than the lantern. Most doubts are, Santa said. Daisy, come over. He only has to hang 1. Benny quickly added, or 0. Milo raised a paw. I support 0 if it gets us to muffins faster. Everybody laughed. Santa chuckled too and then looked kindly at Benny. Benny, may I tell you something? Benny nodded. When I first learned to guide the sleigh, I didn't believe I could either. Benny's mouth dropped open. You? Oh yes, I said. The reindeer were ready. The sleigh was shiny. The stars were sparkling. And I said, perhaps I should stay home and organize socks. Daisy giggled, "Really?" Santa nodded very seriously, "Very important socks." Benny laughed. "Well, what happened?" he asked. Santa leaned in closer. "Someone said, Santa, you don't have to believe that you can do the whole journey. Just believe you can take the first step." Benny looked at the lantern. "The first step?" he whispered. Just then a breeze floated through the meadow. Not a big wind, just a playful one. It tickled the ribbons, it rustled the leaves, and it lifted Benny's golden lantern right out of his paws. "Uh-oh," Benny cried. The lantern bobbled gently through the air, landing on the low willow branch. Not very high, but high enough. Everybody looked at it. The golden lantern swayed softly, glowing in the shade. Milo pointed, "Well, that lantern made a decision." Daisy smiled. "It picked its spot." Benny swallowed. The step ladder stood nearby. 3 little steps, only 3. But to Benny, they looked like a mountain wearing wooden legs. "I can ask Otis," Benny said. Otis the owl fluttered down. "I can help." Benny felt relieved, but then he looked at the lantern again. It had carried it all the way. He had held it carefully. He had wanted to help, and deep inside, the tiny thought disappeared. "Maybe I could try." Benny took a breath. "Wait," he said. Everybody paused. Benny looked at Santa. "What if I go up 1 step?" Santa smiled. "Then you have gone up 1 step." "What if I need to come back down?" "Well, then you come back down 1 step." "What if I look silly?" Milo stepped forward. "Benny, I once got stuck inside a teacup. Silly is survivable." Everybody laughed so warmly that Benny laughed too. He stepped forward towards the ladder, 1 paw on the first step. He froze. Daisy stood by. "I'm right here." Santa nodded, and we are all cheering quietly. Nibbles the squirrel whispered, "Quiet cheering is difficult." Milo whispered back, "Use your indoor enthusiasm." Benny smiled. He lifted his other paw. Now he stood on the first step. Nothing terrible happened. The ladder did not grumble. The willow did not laugh. The meadow stayed friendly. Benny breathed out. "I'm on the first step," he said. Santa clapped softly. "Indeed you are." Benny looked up. The lantern was still a little out of reach. "I might need the second step," he said. Daisy smiled. "Only if you want to try." Benny waited. His heart beat fast. Then he climbed to the second step. The lantern was closer now. He stretched out 1 paw. Not enough. He stretched a bit more. His tongue poked out of the side of his mouth, which is how many great thinkers concentrate. Milo whispered, "The tongue technique, very advanced." Benny giggled. That giggle helped. It loosened the worry in his chest. He stood a little taller, reached a little further, and touched the lantern string. "I've got it," he said. Everybody's faces lit up. Benny gently looped the string over the branch. The lantern settled into place, glowing gold amongst the green leaves. For 1 quiet moment, nobody spoke. Then the whole meadow cheered. Not too loud, not enough to shake Benny, just enough to wrap him like a warm blanket. Benny climbed down carefully. When his paws touched the grass, Daisy hugged him. "You did it!" Benny cheered at the moment, and he stared also at the lantern. "I did." Santa smiled. "What do you think changed?" Benny thought for a long time. "Well, the lantern didn't get smaller," he said. "Nope." "The branch didn't get lower?" "Nope." Benny touched his chest. "I think I got a little braver." Santa's eyes shined. "That's exactly right." That evening, lantern night began. The meadow path glowed with colors: blue, green, pink, orange, and Benny's golden lantern shining near the willow. Animals gathered beneath the tree with muffins and berry tea. Milo carried a muffin almost as big as himself. "This is my training muffin," he announced. "Training for what?" Daisy asked. "Another muffin." Everyone laughed. They came to the sharing circle. Each animal said one thing they were proud of that they had tried. Poppy tried tying ribbon bows. Otis tried singing during the daytime. Milo tried carrying 2 muffins and admitted the second muffin mysteriously disappeared. At last, it was Benny's turn. He looked up at his golden lantern and he looked at his friends. "I didn't believe I could climb even one step," Benny said softly, "but everyone was kind. No one rushed me, and I tried one step, then another." He paused. His voice grew a little softer. He learned that maybe believing in yourself doesn't always come before trying. Sometimes trying helps you believe. The meadow grew quiet in the best kind of way. Then Santa Papa John stood up. "Yes, I stood up. Ho, ho, ho," he said gently. "This is a mighty bright lesson." Benny smiled. The golden lantern flickered above him like it agreed. From that day on, Benny still felt nervous. Sometimes. Oh no. He didn't suddenly climb every tree in Honeybell Hollow. Oh no. That would have surprised everyone, including the trees. But he did try more things. He tried singing one line at the meadow concert. His voice squeaked. Milo called it adorably musical. He tried hopping across 3 flat stones by the stream. He made it across 2.5. The half was mostly splash. He tried helping Tuck the turtle carry berry baskets. He moved so slowly that butterflies passed him twice. But Benny laughed, and each time he tried, something inside him grew. Not loud, not flashy, just steady, like a lantern glowing brighter. One afternoon, Daisy found Benny near the willow tree. He was looking at the golden lantern. "Thinking," she said. Benny nodded. "About what?" Benny smiled. "About how I used to say, 'I don't think I can.' And now," Benny took a deep breath, "now I say, 'I can try.'" Daisy grinned. "That sounds brave." Benny looked up at the lantern, glowing softly in the breeze. "It feels brave." And somewhere nearby, me, Santa Papa John, chuckled warmly, knowing that sometimes the brightest lights are not the ones hanging in the trees. They are the ones that finally turn on inside our hearts. And here's the moral of the story. Sometimes we don't believe we can do something because the challenge looks too big, too new, too far away from who we think we are. But Benny learned that confidence does not always arrive before we begin. Sometimes it grows when we are trying. A small first step taken with kindness around us and courage inside us can change the way we see ourselves. We don't need to have it be perfect, fearless, or ready for everything. We only need to be willing to try, because every brave beginning helps our light shine a little brighter. Wow, that was awesome, boys and girls, mums and dads. I hope you enjoyed that, because you can come back again tomorrow and listen to another story at Storytime by Santa. Ho, 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 Santa loves you.
Warning, the brown cloud is approaching. Some will try to outrun it. Others may not be so lucky. But don't worry, it's all part of the fun at the Chili Cook-Off for books and board games. Where the chili is hot, the flavors are bold, and Bear E has your back with the official Brown Cloud Preparedness Kit. Follow the plan, know your exits, and whatever you do, hold your breath, because this temporary pain is all for a great cause. Join us, laugh with us, survive the Brown Cloud, together at Key Largo Lounge in Greeley.
Join us November 8th at 11 a.m. for the 10th annual Chili Cook-Off for books and board games at our home field, Key Largo Lounge, where our small market team is making a huge statement. Scan the code for tickets and sponsorship information.